This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Getting today's show started is Michael Martin, Kansas FSA Agriculture Program Specialist, discussing upcoming deadlines and what the Farm Bill extension means for FSA. K-State Extension Beef Veterinarian A.J. Tarpoff and family medicine doctor Ron Varner continue the show to talk about what people need to keep in mind when caring for their livestock and themselves as it gets colder. The Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts rounds out today's show. Brad White, Bob Larson, and Dustin Pendell discuss different options for cattle producers to market their calves. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Wednesday show with some information from the Kansas Farm Service Agency. And today we're joined by FSA Agriculture Program Specialist Michael Martin. Michael, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
And Michael, a lot of Kansas is once again or continually experiencing different levels of drought. And so there are some specific programs from the FSA office, and one of those being the Livestock Forage Program.
Yeah, so the Livestock Forage Program, or as other people refer to it as LFP, it's basically a program to provide assistance for producers when they suffer grazing losses, basically due to various levels of drought. Assistance levels are based on the drought level for the county where the grazing land is located in order to determine a payment factor. So if you're listening to this today and you're in a drought-eligible county, make sure you contact your FSA office to inquire about sign up for the program. If you had 2023 grazing losses, basically the deadline to apply for benefits is 30 days after the year in which the grazing loss was suffered, which would be January 30th of 2024 for a 23 grazing loss.
And how could producers know if they are qualified in one of those counties?
So you can look at the U.S. Drought Monitor map and zoom into Kansas. But basically, to be eligible, you need to be in a D2 rating or higher. And the minimum criteria to be in that D2 level, you have to be in it for 8 consecutive weeks during the grazing season. So basically from April 15th through October 15th, that's kind of our standard grazing season around the state for native grass. And if you were in D2 for at least 8 weeks consecutive during that time frame, then you would qualify. And each county office would have a list of, if they triggered for D2, D3, or D4. So you can contact your FSA office, or you can look at that U.S. Drought Monitor map, and you can look at it for the whole year.
And for the Livestock Forage Program, even though drought is probably the main thing on many people's minds, is that the only weather event that can qualify people for this program?
For LFP, yes, drought is the only qualifier for that program.
And one more program for producers to be thinking about maybe this time of year, emergency assistance for livestock, honeybees, and farm-raised fish.
Yeah, so that's another one of our livestock disaster programs that we administer. And as you said, it's for livestock, honeybees, and farm-raised fish. The acronym we use for that program is known as ELAP. And it comes into play because of increased feed costs or having to transport or relocate livestock, say from if you're in a drought county and you need to relocate them somewhere else. There's some transportation assistance costs with that. And also because of drought, we have the assistance available for producers if, say, their pond went dry because of the drought and they had to haul water. So again, if you're in a drought county, you've had to haul water, relocate livestock, or you've had to buy feed, you can contact your local FSA office, inquire about that program. And just like LFP, the deadline to submit an application for payment for 23 qualifying losses would be January 30th.
And talking about, once again, some more programs from the Farm Service Agency, and what are those that maybe producers should be aware of right now?
Yeah, so we have a lot of programs taking place around the state. It's a busy time right now for our field office staff as well as producers. In addition to counties processing LFP and ELAP applications, we have the 2022 Emergency Relief Program going on. That's for 2022 crop production losses. Chances are, if you received a crop insurance indemnity for a qualifying disaster event, you may have received an application in the mail for ERP Track 1. Those were mailed out, but if you did suffer losses and you did not receive one of those applications in the mail, you still may qualify, so you should still reach out to your county office and inquire. And those would fall under Track 2 applications if it wasn't a pre-filled application mailed to you. But right now, there's no deadline announced for that. Basically, we're processing applications as we receive them, so if you're interested and you think you may qualify for benefits, then you should contact your office, your local county office.
Also, is there a thing for producers who unfortunately suffered losses of their livestock?
Yeah, so another program under our Livestock Disaster Assistance Program, we have what they call the Livestock Indemnity Program, or LIP. And that program is designed to assist producers when they've had excess livestock deaths in excess of normal mortality due to a weather-related event, such as tornado, blizzard, winter storm, that kind of thing. And that comes to the end of the year here at the end of December. And again, like our other livestock programs, in order to apply for benefits, you need to file that application within 30 days of the year the loss occurred. So again, January 30th, 2024 for 23 livestock losses.
As we're talking about deadlines, Michael, one that's really important and comes up this week is a deadline for reporting fall-seeded small grain acreages for crops.
Yeah, so December 15th, that's our big deadline for fall-seeded small grain acreage reporting. This would apply to winter wheat, barley, triticale, canola, and rye. You know, Kansas is known as the wheat state, so a lot of producers plant winter wheat December 15th, which is this coming Friday. That's the deadline for that, to report it without penalty. You can report it to us, and then you can take our report to your crop insurance agent and report it there. If you fail to report it timely by December 15th to either the FSA office or your crop insurance agent, you can still report it after December 15th to FSA, but there is a late filed penalty that it applies, and that's a minimum of $46 per farm, FSA farm number.
If people are just now realizing they haven't gotten that filed yet, what should they probably do?
Call your office right away. FSA offices around the state, we do appointments for acreage reporting, but we also accept walk-ins. So, if you realize today that you haven't reported your acres, go ahead and call your office and get on their appointment schedule, and they can get you taken care of.
And one deadline that has come and gone, but there has been an extension to, the 2018 Farm Bill. And so what does that extension mean for Farm Service Agency?
Yeah, so the 2018 Farm Bill, it expired on September 30th of 2023. And we were kind of in a waiting pattern to see if they were going to do a new Farm Bill or authorize an extension. But just recently, Congress passed a continuing resolution to fund the government I think it goes into February. But anyway, as part of that continuing resolution, they added a 1-year extension to the 2018 Farm Bill. So this gives producers more certainty about programs. It lets them be available to apply for marketing assistance loans on their grain, make offers for conservation reserve program contracts, and also the program most everybody's familiar with is the Agriculture Risk Coverage or Price Loss Coverage Program, better known as ARC or PLC. But by that extension, then we will have a sign up for 2024 However, no sign-up date has been announced yet. I know the national office staff is working on that to roll it out as quickly as possible, to develop the deadlines and stuff for that. So I would anticipate here by the end of the year, first part of 2024, we hear something and there's stuff going out in the media about sign-up dates and stuff.
Wanting to give just a reminder to our producers then, or people who are interested in things from the Farm Service Agency, where can they find out more information?
Yeah, so a handy website, they can just go to farmers.gov, farmers.gov, and there's all kinds of information on there. That's kind of the FSA hub, you could say. I mean, you can also go to fsa.usda.gov for more information, but farmers.gov is kind of what the information hub is for all things USDA.
Michael, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share with us some information and give us an update from the Farm Service Agency.
Well, thank you for having me today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today, and hope everybody has a safe holiday season.
You as well, Michael. That was Kansas FSA Agriculture Program Specialist Michael Martin. If you'd like to find that U.S. Drought Monitor map that he mentioned towards the beginning of our interview, there are two places you can find it. The first is drought.gov. Again, that is DROUGHT.gov. Or you can also find it at droughtmonitor.unl.edu. Again, that is droughtmonitor.unl.edu. And as always, if you'd like to find out more information from the Farm Service Agency or learn more about their programs or find your local service center, you can do that by going to farmers.gov. And while you're there at farmers.gov, you can subscribe to their updates where you can stay updated on the latest news and stories from farmers.gov. And you can also select to be updated on other USDA topics. All of this will be linked in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be back with more ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our Wednesday show thinking about things that people need to keep in mind for themselves and their livestock as it comes to cooler temperatures. And to start off our conversation, we're joined with K-State Extension beef veterinarian AJ Tarpoff. AJ, thanks for joining us today.
Always a pleasure.
AJ, as it does get cooler outside, people need to be thinking about cold stress for their livestock.
Cold stress happens every year, and it's always a concern, right? If you're a spring calving herd, calving, early in the year, we have some concerns with our newborn baby calves, but also some of these big cold stress events that I'll say that, we have a big drop in temperature, we have increase in wind speeds. That can also cause some production problems and some drop in production for some of our growing animals, including feedlot cattle.
So how do we want to protect those animals to hopefully reduce the likelihood of cold stress?
Yeah, so it's not just about the temperature. We got to think about wind speed. We got to think about, the temperature, the moisture, all of these things kind of play into a key role that all of those things impact our animals. This winter in particular, we're going to have more moisture, more moisture than what we've had the last several years. So that's a good thing, but also a concern when we start looking about cold stress. So how do we modify the environment? We can't control the weather, but how do we modify the environment to increase cattle comfort during these events? My first and foremost is bedding. Bedding, whether it's wheat straw, whether it's corn stalks, any type of some of that spent forage material that's not going to be nutritional value, we can use as bedding. It provides a thermal layer to the ground where animals have a comfortable area to be able to lay down, bed up. They're protected from that frozen ground, and it gives them a nice area to get out of the wind, get out of some of those elements. Just as an example, in feedlot cattle, if we bed feedlot cattle during the winter months and during those really nasty cold times, we can reduce the number of days on feed. Some South Dakota work just a couple years ago showed that they're over a month less on feed to be able to hit the finished target weights whenever we bed feedlot cattle. So yes, it's an expense to be able to put it out, to be able to pay for those things, but it does pay off in the end. For our newborn baby calves, again, they're being born into a very cold environment. So we want to have them in a protected area, hopefully with a windbreak. Wind and moisture are the two key elements we want to control for our cow-calf herds. So whether it's a portable windbreak or you actually calve in a protected site in some trees or a shelter belt, however that looks, I personally like movable windbreaks. We can move in different areas so we can control where we feed our animals. We can spread some of those contaminants, over a much larger area. However you do it, just make sure we want a windbreak and have a good bedded area for those newborn baby calves to get up, get dry, get that first nursing milk, and get off to a good start.
So is getting food in their belly something really important for cold stress?
Food is critical for cold stress, regardless of how big the animal is. A newborn absolutely needs that first colostrum very early in life and to continue nursing to keep up that readily available energy level, because the body, it takes a lot of energy to produce heat. For our cows and for our production animals like feedlot cattle, all that energy that we're feeding them, it increases their maintenance energy requirements. So instead of growth, instead of lactation, all those extras, they are using the majority of what we're feeding them just to maintain body temperature. So that means whenever it gets cold, maybe we have some higher levels of energy, some better quality hay for our cows. Maybe we have, we change our rations a little bit in the feedlot to make sure they're getting all the energy requirements that they need, because we know they're spending a huge amount of energy just trying to stay in normal body temperature.
Are there a few signs of cold stress?
There are. The biggest thing, however, the behavioral changes, especially if you're a newborn, I don't trust. That's where having a thermometer, using a rectal thermometer and actually seeing what the internal temperature is the best indicator. So my recommendation for cow-calf operators, carry a thermometer in their calving kit, because if they have a hypothermic calf, it's a quick, easy test and say, hey, this calf needs a little extra help. Normal body temperature for a newborn baby calf should be 101 to 102-ish degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if it drops below 100, that's already in mild hypothermia or low body temperature. So intervention, drying them off, putting them on the floorboard of your pickup with the defrost so they can get some, warm, dry air circulating around them, however you do that. But anything below 100 degrees Fahrenheit, they can use a little extra bump.
If people would like to kind of keep track of cold stress, is there a tool available for them?
There is. So, regardless of your plan, regardless of your operation, cold stress hits us all. So planning ahead and monitoring the conditions is really important. Thankfully, our Kansas Mesonet, that's Mesonet, here at K-State, we have an animal comfort index. Okay, and that comfort index, usually we're talking about heat stress with the Mesonet, but it crosses heat and cold. So it takes into all those different parameters of wind speed and solar radiation, humidity levels, and temperature, and really puts it into a model to show how that cold temperature is impacting our animals. So use the Mesonet Animal Comfort Index to plan ahead. We have a forecasting tool that's available with that as well, so we can look out several days in advance and say, hey, we have not just how we feel or what we see on the regular TV, but guess what? We can look at the Mesonet and see how that temperature and how that environmental temperature at a local level is impacting our animals, and we can plan accordingly.
AJ, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share with us a few things to think about when it gets cold for livestock.
Thank you.
That was K-State Extension Beef Veterinarian AJ Tarpoff. I will link the Mesonet in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're now going to be joined by family medicine Dr. Ron Varner as he discusses the human aspect of this. Ron, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Ron, talking about a few different things. First off being frostbite, and what is frostbite?
Frostbite is when, believe it or not, ice crystals form in the tissues, and when that happens, then you can actually clot off small blood vessels, get thrombi in the small blood vessels. Usually it's painful at first, and sometimes even the pain diminishes over time. They just become, if you will, numb. Treatment for it, they used to say rub snow on your hands and all this stuff. Well, that's not adequate treatment. What you want to do is rewarm the extremities, which is usually where the frostbite is, in warm water, as warm as you can stand it. And it may take up to 30 minutes before the tissue begins to revitalize. And you can always tell by the distal part, the furthest part, which is usually your fingers or toes, you want them to return to like normal flushing, where you would you push on it and you would get return circulation. In the field, if you get your hands wet or toes wet, get away from any wet clothing and get on dry clothing. I know I usually advise farmers in the wintertime to take extra gloves and extra clothes just in case they would get wet, because wet and cold are not good. That hastens frostbite.
And is wet and cold also a concern for people maybe getting hypothermia?
That is true. Hypothermia is usually defined by your core temperature drops below 95 degrees. The symptoms, first symptoms are shivering and poor judgment, loss of coordination, which can be risky with farm equipment. And as it progresses, if it gets more extreme, shivering stops. And that's always a good warning sign. When the shivering stops, you're in big trouble. Your heart rate slows down, your pupils dilate, you have loss of coordination and lethargy. In fact, I've heard of cases, I've never encountered this, where you find somebody that's hypothermic and they don't want to leave the cold environment because they feel comfortable. Well, obviously their judgments is impaired and their core temperature is impaired. The treatment for that is just rewarm as quick as you can. That's one case where it's good to get up, move around, slap your arms, get the circulation going to restore your normal core temperature. In extreme cases, you have to be transported to the emergency room. They give IV fluids and try to resuscitate you back up to a normal core temperature. If not, it proceeds to coma and then eventually to death. As coroner, I've had 2 or 3 hypothermic deaths, and it comes on a lot quicker than what people would think.
So really, is that just watching yourself and hopefully being with somebody while you're out in the cold?
Yes. The key to that, too, is like when you're cold and shivering stops, you're in big trouble.
So being mindful of yourself there, and also probably important to be mindful of what you're doing when you're walking on ice.
That's true. I always tell people, trust your feet, not your eyes. Where I water our cattle, the ground's all pockmarked from them walking around. You can't really see the ice in some of those holes. If it feels slick, it is slick, and just be extremely careful with that. Like I always tell them, trust your feet, not your eyes.
Should people try to catch themselves or maybe just hopefully gracefully fall?
It depends, kind of. I mean, if you can gracefully fall, that's great. But most falls that occur on slippery surfaces just happen quickly. And, you probably should relax and go with the fall. But like I said, it happens so quickly, most people don't have time to react.
And I know in the winter, I like hopping into a warm car or being warm in my house. However, taking into account carbon monoxide is really important this time of year.
That's true. And there's, they make those kits you can check for carbon monoxide, but, a lot of times you don't know. What I tell farmers and ranchers, if they're in a tractor or a vehicle, keep the window cracked a little bit, even if it's extremely cold, to get some fresh air in there. Carbon monoxide poisoning, you get lethargic and, the next thing, you're unconscious.
Ron, is there any other big key things you'd like to tell producers or people to remember when it comes to cold weather?
Well, I just have 3 simple things. I tell them, keep warm, keep dry, and keep moving. Keeping warm obviously explains itself. Keeping dry, get rid of wet clothes as quick as you can, because that hastens hypothermia and can hasten frostbite. And keep moving. By keeping moving, you stimulate circulation to all the muscles and tissues and maintain your core temperature at normal.
Ron, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share with us some information for people to keep in mind when it comes to cold weather.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
That was Ron Varner, who's a doctor in family medicine. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more ahead.
You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we round out our Wednesday show with the Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts.
Hi, welcome to Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts, where our experts will answer your questions. I'm Brad White, joined by 2 good experts today, Dr. Dustin Pendell.
Good morning.
And Dr. Bob Larson.
Good morning.
So happy to have you guys here because we've got a great question for you relative to marketing calves. And as your question is answered, these guys will each get up to 10 points. So today's question focuses on how do I decide what is the best option to market my calves? Auction, video or online sales, or direct marketing? Bob, I'm going to go to you first.
Well, I think Dustin will emphasize, some of the things to have to consider. But one is if you're really emphasizing, the best return, I'm going to say some of the strategies actually require a little bit more work. such as direct marketing or working through a video auction, something like that. They do take more work, and like for a video auction, it wouldn't be for everybody. They have some load limits, so you have to have at least a pot-sized load. For direct marketing, you're going to have to really do the price negotiation and identify the potential customers, but I think that extra work can result in some extra income.
Off to a good start with your load limits. Mm-hmm. Using the same word multiple times in a sentence makes perfect sense. All right, Dustin.
Rob brings up some good points, and every operation is going to be a little different, I guess, just to begin. And there are some things you want to think about, and one of those factors that Bob hit on was the labor, right? If you want to do the direct marketing, that's probably going to take a little more time. Some people enjoy that aspect. Me personally, I would not like that. I probably follow the other end. I would personally more the auction because I can just load them up, drop them off, sale barn. And again, for me, it comes back to not only the labor component, but how comfortable do you feel with that choice that you pick? And so,
the price discovery is really taken care of for you, and usually that's very appropriate. But again, I'm letting someone else take all of that responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big differences that you guys are talking direct marketing, you're going to have to come up with what price to set for your calves. And auction marketing, you're going to get the best price based on which auction I select, when I market them, all of those things. And I'm going to put together, we talked about asking the question, online video versus live sale. We'll lump those two together and call them auction marketing for this because I think they're similar. So I want a follow-up question, and right now it's tied 5-5, but follow-up question, I'm going to start with Dustin first. How do you make sure that I get the best price for my calves? So in your scenario, you're taking them to the auction. How do I make sure I get the best price?
So if I'm taking them to an auction, best price is maybe shop around a little bit, which sale barns in your area tend to have maybe more buyers. As you're preparing them, are you doing your vaccinations, some of those kind of programs? Can you generate some premiums? I would think those would be some of the ways to try to get those premiums.
Absolutely. And even communicating with that auction, when are there special sales? If I'm doing preconditioning, when are those special sales? What do they look like? When should I bring my cattle in, right? So they can market them a little bit. Direct marketing, a little bit different, Bob. How do I make sure I get the best price in that scenario?
I think it goes back to the name of direct marketing. You're going to have a conversation with one or more buyers and really try to align what you're going to produce with what they want. And again, I think it just goes back to, it takes a lot more work. You're going to do the work of identifying potential buyers. You're going to negotiate with them. What do they want? What do you think your value is? And so it takes a lot more work, but it's going to take communication.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the challenge? And one of the pushbacks I hear is, yes, I'm not afraid of a little more work, but now I'm selling my calves to people who once a year, to people who are buying them every day. How do I manage that potential information disparity?
I think that's a really big and important information disparity. One of the places that I think, and I'm going to throw out maybe a little different spin on it, is rather than like feeder calves, maybe the best place to get started with direct marketing might be on a different class of cattle, such as replacement heifers or something like that, where that information might have more value typically than with feeder calves. And maybe I'll do a combination where I send my feeder calves through an auction market, something like that. But with my replacement heifers, maybe I have some contacts already. And so maybe a combination of both direct marketing and some auction marketing.
I like that a lot. So you sell the information along with the cattle. And nice job. So Bob ended up with 9 points. Dustin ended up with 8. Thank you guys for joining us. If you have questions, send them to us at bci@ksu.edu.
Once again, that was BCI's Ask the Experts. That's all we have for you today on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you tomorrow.